themeatly Games have dropped 15 new achievements in their recent Bendy and the Ink Machine updates. What do they entail? Watch on to find out. Number 1. A Sweet Discovery. This achievement has a question mark symbol and the description for it is, say hello to an old friend. This is really exciting as it seems to confirm that we will finally get to meet Joey Drew. At the beginning of the game, Henry receives a letter from Joey in which he is addressed as an old friend, so it looks like we will find out more about Joey Drew's fate. Was he transformed into an ink worker, or is he still human? I can't wait to find out. Number 2. Goldbricking. It has a drink symbol and the description is, let others do the work. Goldbricking is a term to describe slacking off, so it seems there will be a mission in Chapter 5 where we need to work together with other characters. Since we've met many new characters in Chapter 4, such as the Lost Ones and the new Alice, Angel, and Boris, we may have to work together with them to build something. Then again, we may end up finding even more characters in Chapter 5. It would be great if we could finally find good old Wally Franks. Unfortunately, I couldn't find an achievement related to him though. A bummer. But you know, themeatly Games has really been clever with creating puns for their achievements so far, so it seems that we may literally have to work with bricks in this special mission. What could we be building though? As we have one final encounter left with the Ink Demon, it could be a fortress or a safe house for everyone, especially those who aren't able to or are afraid of facing the tainted ink. Another idea could be from our analysis of the Chapter 5 production trailer, where we suggested that there could be a ship involved in exploring the deepest depths of Joey Drew's studio. This would be a little less punny, however. Number 3. Toe Tappin'. It has a radio symbol with a tick on it, and the description is, find the radio in Chapter 5. Nice and easy to understand, but it does get you wondering which fan song will be able to make it into the final game. Number 4. Gold Record. It has a picture of a radio with a star on it, and the description is, find all hidden radios in the game. This is self-explanatory, and it is awesome to get an achievement for finding all of the radios playing Bendy fan songs. Number 5. Grant's Puppeteer. It has a symbol of themeatly, and the description is, find themeatly in all chapters. This is another achievement for doing something in all of the chapters, and this time it's for finding themeatly. Unlike for the radio achievements, it seems we might get this one when we finally find themeatly in Chapter 5, or the final meatly if the one in Chapter 5 was found already. Given that there isn't an achievement for finding themeatly in Chapter 5, I wonder what theme he will have when we do come across him. Would he be celebrating like in the barbecued achievement? Would he be eating food again like in tea time? Or would he be staring at us with cold eyes, just like in Chapter 1? Heck, maybe he'll end up smiling at us in celebration. Wouldn't that be a change? The naming of this achievement is slightly odd. Is Grant referring to Grant the character, or is the achievement granting us the title of the puppeteer? Either way, it would still make sense. Grant Cohen was the one pulling the strings behind the numbers at the studio after all, but I personally think it refers to themeatly granting us the title of puppeteer, because it is a huge achievement to find all of those hidden meatlies across the game. That is, you know, unless my videos help you out. Number 6. No Need for a Spoon. It has a bacon symbol and the description is, collect all the bacon soup in Chapter 5. It wouldn't be a Bendy chapter without the option to collect all of the bacon soup, would it? Number 7. Master of Bacon. It has a symbol showing 3 bacon strips and the description is, collect all the bacon soup in the game. Another delicious achievement, and this time it's to round off Henry's bacon soup cravings. Number 8. Now hear this. It has a symbol of a tape player and the description is, listen to all audio logs in Chapter 5. This confirms that we are still going to get more tapes in the final chapter. We have already learnt a lot about the lore, but this gets me excited about what they will finally reveal that could tie everything together. In Chapter 3, we learnt quite a lot about Susie through her audio tapes, so I hope similar things happen with characters like Joey Drew, Henry, and hopefully Alison Pendle. Then again, we might actually hear directly from her in Chapter 5. Number 9. Pipes and Problems. There is a symbol of a broken pipe, and the description is, found a new way through. This achievement seems to confirm that Henry will be stuck in the next area of the game. With the strong reference to pipes and remembering the production trailer for Chapter 5, it seems that this will be the path that our protagonist takes as a way to progress through the stage. Given that the pipe looks broken, perhaps Henry needs to break his way through in order to go further. This might have to do with the intense flooding happening at the studio. It makes me wonder whether it was Henry and his party's fault that the ink got loose in the first place. On the other hand, maybe the area was flooded to the brim, and Henry has to solve some of those familiar ink pressure puzzles to relieve it. That way, the pipes can become a way out of the next area, granting us the achievement. Number 10. Shadows and Suffering. It has a symbol of an ink skull and the description is, discover what's living below. This is a super interesting one. What could be lurking in the lower depths of the studio? Some may say Bendy, but I don't think we would get another achievement after finding him in every other chapter. The clue may lie in the skull symbol itself, which reminds me of a few things. One thing it reminds me of is the Lost Ones. Perhaps there is a legion of evil or trapped Lost Ones that we will need to find and set free. This would also suggest that Henry could be the one who will set those in the studio free, as we've mentioned in previous videos. Another thing it reminds me of is the ink skull that the blob near Sean Flynn's recording turns into. Perhaps that blob was foreshadowing this moment, and we will have to face off against a shape-shifting enemy. It would be a pretty interesting boss battle for sure, as it could lead us into learning more about Henry, especially if the boss knows his relationship between him and whoever it changes into. How cool would it be to see it morph into Bendy and tell Henry that he can't defeat him, then morph into Imperfect Alice and tell him that he couldn't even beat her on his own. In a moment of weakness, it could then morph into Boris and taunt Henry, telling him that he couldn't even save his closest friend at the studio. Now that my imagination is going wild, it would be super interesting if the boss planted himself amongst Henry's friends that was suggested in the Goldbricking achievement. The final thing that this skull reminds me of is the portrait in the ballroom of Chapter 4. This is the area where we had to face off against Brute Boris. Around the ballroom are portraits of disturbing figures. There's a crying woman with a rabid, tentacled creature eating into her left eye, a salivating man who looks like a vampire with a gun barrel pointing out of his belly, a crying lady holding her right eye on an outstretched platter, and another that looks like a skeleton in a suit, gasping. This last portrait of the skeleton is what reminds me of the icon. When I see the portraits together, I get the feeling of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, so perhaps there will be an apocalypse at the studio and Henry will find these 4 enemies, triggering the achievement. But who could they be? Some may think that the 4 portraits represent some of the more powerful figures at the studio. The 2 females may be Susie Campbell and Alison Pendle, especially since Imperfect Alice was missing a left eye. The man with the gun sticking out of his belly could be the special person that Alice mentioned in Chapter 3, who the Tommy gun belonged to. As for who he represents at the studio, I can't be sure, since we've already seen Sammy and Norman, who I would suspect to be the major forces at the studio. The only other choices we have are Wally Franks and Thomas Connor. In Chapter 4, we learnt that Wally Franks thinks of himself as somewhat of a genius, so perhaps this is actually a truth that we will learn about in Chapter 5.
If these guys don't start realizing who the real genius is, I'm out of here.
Then there's the skeleton creature, who I think would be Joey Drew, as it would make sense to make this icon show someone who should be most important to the story. However, who's to say that the man with the gun sticking out of his belly isn't Joey, and the skeleton character Wally? Also, we have to remember that we already have a Sweet Discovery achievement, so unless this isn't for Joey Drew, it seems a little redundant to have another achievement for finding him. It's interesting to note that the portraits depict something that we've seen throughout our journey through the studio. Like I've said, we've seen the ink blob that turns into a skull, we've seen that Alice Angel is missing a left eye, and we've also seen a Tommy gun. But another thing to note is we've also seen an eyeball on a table. Granted, it's not a platter, the eyeball on the pool table in Chapter 2 looks remarkably similar to the one in the portrait in the ballroom. It's really interesting to think about, and it really could be foreshadowing us meeting these characters. The 4 portraits could also be of the gods that Joey is trying to appease, and they could be the true forces that are keeping the studio and everyone in it in lockdown. It would be fitting to find these evil gods in the deepest area of the studio, much like the devil would be thought to reside in the deepest pits of hell. Considering that we have also essentially entered a Bendy hell from Chapter 4, it makes this even more convincing. In this case, Henry would have to find a way to overcome the powers of these gods. Those who've seen my Chapter 5 production trailer analysis would remember that Henry has to get something from Ink Bendy, so perhaps that moment was the point where he realized that the original offerings that Joey Drew used had to be retrieved. This way, the gods' powers would be taken from them, allowing everyone to be set free by Henry. On the other hand, we might have some intense boss fights ahead of us, and after fighting characters like Bertram, I'd be horrified to see what they have in store for us, especially the man with the gun belly. Henry would essentially enter the shadows and end the suffering. Number 11. Standing Proud. It has a symbol with an arrow and a circle, and the description is, find out where you belong. This is an interesting achievement because it raises the question of where Henry does belong. Does he have to make a choice to help one character rather than another, such as Joey Drew instead of Alice Angel? Well, I'm thinking along the lines of something similar to choosing the Angel and Demon path in Chapter 3. If so, this achievement might be unlocked at the moment you make that decision. It might also unlock after you discover what the right decision was, if that ends up being a thing. As for the arrow with the circle, perhaps it is showing that Henry has to jump down one hole or another when he makes this choice. Perhaps they are pipes from what we've seen in previous achievements. Pretty interesting stuff, and I wonder where he will end up and how it will affect the finale, especially if it involves facing the portraited characters from before. It would be cool to give us the option of being a helper or a betrayer too. Number 12. The Voice Collector. The icon has an audio tape with a checkmark symbol, and the description is, listen to all audio logs in the game. Definitely a satisfying achievement to get that will unveil the entire story for us. We hope. Still, get hyped! Number 13. To Hell and Back. It has a door symbol and the description is, complete the main story. This is the achievement we will all be excited to get. Judging from the symbol, it looks like Henry and his party will be able to finally find the exit and get out of the studio. But hold on a second, main story? There's more than one story to complete here? Now things are getting juicy. Or as someone pointed out in one of my previous videos, meaty, and this is going to make the Standing Proud achievement even more interesting. It also gets you thinking whether other requirements should be met to get other endings, such as getting all of the achievements or selecting the Angel or Demon path in Chapter 3. If so, the ending for Bendy and the Ink Machine is going to get a little bit complicated, and heck, I'm not complaining. I'm also wondering if this could hint towards DLC for other endings. I personally can't wait to experiment and find out more about what the backstory of the studio and its characters hold for us. Even if there aren't alternative endings, if there is an epilogue, that would be insanely cool. Number 14. Aggression. It has a fist symbol and the description is bathe in violence. This one seems to hint at there being a lot of combat in Chapter 5. We've seen before that there might be a few bosses to encounter, but this achievement suggests that we may have an option to fight many enemies or not. Then again, it may be unlocked if Henry is forced into a combat situation or if some sort of similar cutscene plays. It gets me wondering whether the final chapter will bring back spawning enemies like in Chapter 3, rather than having scripted ones like in Chapter 4. Number 15. Valued Employee. There is a symbol with an eye in a skull, and the description is, take a longer walk. It looks like Henry will have the option to take a scenic route sometime in the story. I can see this panning out in a few ways. One is that Henry takes a walk with Joey Drew, provided that he isn't as corrupted as the other major ink workers we've come across so far. And the reason why I think this is because they are both old friends. Another is that there may be diverging paths like in Chapter 3, meaning one of them would be shorter than the other. I also think that there's opportunity for Henry to take a secret path that just happens to be longer. I'm thinking something along the lines of finding the hidden paths in Cuphead, but I'm pretty sure Cuphead had shortcuts rather than scenic routes. Something interesting to note about Aggression and Valued Employee is that they were added separately from the other achievements and might be opposite choices available in the story. This means that the shorter path may have the drawback, or benefit, depending on what type of gamer you are, of increased chance of combat or some sort of violent decision in the story. On the other hand, Valued Employee would be a more peaceful path and perhaps a more beneficial one, judging from the title of the achievement. And with this being said, it could go both ways. Would Henry be a valued employee to Joey Drew, or in the perspective of his co-workers? Either way, if we have the choice of saving everyone or not, it's going to be a tough one to make when we finally learn all sides of the story. Of course, there was even more revealed in the Chapter 5 production trailer, so tap this video to find out more, or check out these videos which are picked just for you. If you're new, remember to subscribe and tap that bell for Bendy and horror game theories that actually make sense. And prodigies, I hope these videos help to expand on how you think. See ya!